Welcome to the $100 million Mindset, the source for business owners who aspire to scale, grow, and reach their full potential. Whether you're aiming for 5 million, 10 million, or 100 million. Your hosts are Alan O'Neill, the Irish plumber, who scaled Abacus Plumbing and Cooling to over 100 million, and timely Todd, Liles, a coach to high-performing business leaders and the owner of Service Excellence, are going to help you think bigger, act smarter, and take your business to the next level.
Alan, I'm so excited. We have Paul Kelly here, a good friend of yours.
Paul is one of the best. Absolutely one of the best. Yep.
And Alan assembled this little summation of you as a human, and we're going to take a moment. And Alan, just tell us a little bit about Paul here.
Yeah, so Paul Kelly is a visionary leader in the home services industry and the driving force behind Parker and Sons, one of the most successful HVAC plumbing and electrical companies in the country. Under his leadership, Parker and Sons have scaled beyond 200 million in revenue, setting industry benchmarks for customer service, operational excellence, and marketing innovation. Paul is known for his ability to create a Tadada experience for customers, his strategic growth mindset, and his commitment to empowering his team to succeed at every level.
Absolutely, thank you. And Paul, I got the first question for you here today. I was going back and reading some of the things that you wrote, and there's this quote that stood out to me. It said, creating a ta-da moment means exceeding expectations every single time. It's not just about the service, it's about the experience. And of course, this is talking about what you do at Parker and Sons. It's also talking about the fact that you literally wrote the book, Tada Service. So my question to you is, how did the concept of Tada, how did that influence your leadership and your overall vision for Parker and Sons?
So I ended up writing a book, Tricks of the Trade to Success. And in that, I had a magic theme. So the ta-da moment was part of that. I used to do magic, and I'm getting back into it now a little bit. But it really is those moments, and we've all had them. And it doesn't have to be at work. It's those moments that you have with your spouse, with your loved ones, having your first kid, birthday parties, whatever. Those are all ta-da moments. And you certainly have them in your business as well. And what I recognized is that there was a lot of ta-da moments that I wasn't recognizing. Even the everyday things that technicians do, that the CSRs do, that everyone at work does, adds to this performance in some sense of wowing the customer. And that's, most people call it a wow, go for the wow. And that's what we used to always call it. When I wrote the book, I started calling it something a little bit different, ta-da moments. And a funny, interesting part of the book is, when you reach 200 million, we're going to do, I think, close to 250 million this year. All of a sudden, everybody thinks you know what you're doing. And I'm not sure I'm there yet, but everyone said you ought to really write a book, and because of your success, some of your philosophies, some of the ideas that you have, and I kind of logged that away. And at some point, I decided I was going to write this book. And I came to my wife. This is the funny part. I go, "Hey, Tricia, I'm going to need a little time alone over the next 5 or 6 weeks." She goes, "Why? What's wrong?" I go, "There's nothing wrong. I'm going to write a book." And she goes, "Write a book?" She says, "You don't even like reading." I go, I didn't say I was going to read it. I said I was going to write it. But anyway, I really enjoyed writing it. And the ta-da moments are those moments that you look back at something that you did, performance that you had, a tech that you hired, a tech giving the outstanding service that they do, installer, everybody. And you look back at what your body of work in a sense, and hopefully we've all been able to say, "Ta-da!" And that's what we're going for, aren't we? That we want a
Absolutely.
ta-da life. We want a life filled of things that we're proud of,
Yes.
and so really that's what ta-da means to me.
Paul, did you ever read the book Unreasonable Hospitality?
No, no, I have not.
There's some similarities in there where it's about 11 Madison Park and their quest to be the number one restaurant in the world. And they have moments of magic. And when going through your book, I found myself going, oh, there's some similarities here. And one of the things they think about is like when a guest is in New York and he overheard a guest say, man, I really am having an amazing experience. I guess the one thing I'm disappointed about is I didn't get a hot dog. Well, one of the servers had heard that and they sent out some people to get a real New York City hot dog and they brought it back to the kitchen and they fancied it up 11 Madison Park style. But then at the end, they wanted to thank them for, what a wonderful opportunity to serve them. And they said, well, we have one last gift for them. And they said, we heard you were wanting to have a New York City hot dog. And they presented it
Yeah,
to them. And even though they were spending $1,400 a person at this restaurant, the 50-cent hot dog was the highlight of the day.
yeah,
So those
yeah,
little
yeah,
moments creating them, right?
yeah. And it's not just for your customers. I mean, you want to create a lot of ta-da moments for your employees, your team members,
Absolutely.
when they can brag about the company they work for or with, and the neat little things that you do, or maybe it's a big thing that you did. But I love creating those moments for the employees as well.
Well, you talk about those moments. That's part of your leadership style. So how do you create those moments and how in your leadership are you aligning this customer first philosophy of, to die and creating these moments with your people? How do you bring all this together?
Well, it starts with our formula is not customer first. It's employee
Hmm.
first. Um, it's always the employee first, the customer second, the company last. They all need to be, they're all important, and they all have to have a great experience in a sense. But it is the employees that we love to take care of first. And when you have that philosophy, you end up, I tell people that, our employees care more about the company than I do sometimes, I think. When you go to any company in America and you ask the employees if they care about the company they work for, and invariably they'll say yes. But do they care
Mm.
enough? It's that enough that makes the difference. Enough to take care of each other first, take care of our customers second, and the company third. And so I think we mostly concentrate on, hey, how do we take care of each other? Which also means how do we provide the kind of experience and the kind of opportunities and the kind of compensation and the kind of benefits and the kind of fun that you want to have if you work as hard as we all do. You want to have fun at work. That's one of my things I look for. If I interview someone and I know I'm not going to have fun working with them, not that I wouldn't hire them if they were exceptional at something, but I do want to have fun with the people that I work with. That life's too short not to have fun, laugh, enjoy what you're doing.
Mm.
So we look for all those things, and I think then they end up caring more about the company or as much as I do. And when you have that, you have something special. And I know Alan. I learned a lot from Alan along the way. That even we do a three promise thing, which I'm sure you heard from Alan. Maybe that's part of another podcast, but that's just a gem that really sets up the whole thing for everyone. So Yeah, it's that's basically how we create those ta-da moments.
Awesome. Alan, what's the 3-part process?
Well, yeah. So it's a story that goes back several years. We had a plumbing manager interviewing a technician once, and the technician basically said, "Why should I come work for you?" And of course, my manager said, "Well, we've got great benefits, and we take great care of you," and the technician said, "So does everybody else.
Mm.
Why should I come work for you?" And so we ended up brainstorming this question. Like, the manager brought me in, and I said, "Look, I really had to think about what we offer our people." And I said, "We're willing to make you 3 promises. First of all, if you work here for any length of time, we're going to make you better at your job. We're going to make you a better technician. Secondly, we're going to make you a better human being." And that raises an eyebrow. Like, how do you make me a better human being? And really, because we train our technicians and all our employees so well in communication skills, they automatically become a better husband, a better wife, a better brother, a better sister. And last but not least, if you stay here for any length of time, we'll improve your financial position. And so you'll end up leaving here more financially secure than when you came here. And it's one thing to make the promises. Really, at the end of the day, if they're leaving, it's the last question we ask: how did we do with our 3 promises? And the magic behind the ta-da moment behind that is that when that's the last question you answer going out the door. Now, look, if they're mad, they're going to say, "You did terrible. You don't do this and you don't do that." But if they're being reasonable with you, they're going to say, "Yes, I'm a better tech. Yes, I'm more financially secure." They'll typically answer positively, but we want them to remember that we cared about them, and that's why we have such a return rate. A lot of the people that leave us come back to us, and so we just found those questions to be particularly powerful. So that's our 3 promises. We've made them for years. I know Paul incorporated them into Parker and Sons. And I've even heard your daughter-in-law talking with the lovely Irish accent talking about them, Paul. So it's a good deal. But Paul, I think I met you when Parker and Sons were about 45 or 50 million, and of course you're 250 million now. And one of the things that always struck me was, like, I know how long you worked. I know, like, you were in there 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and many evenings it was dark when you left. But you seem to have that growth from the outside looking in without breaking a sweat. Like, it seems to be easy for you. And I know it's not easy for you. Don't get me wrong. But what do you think the keys are to having, we'll call it $100 million mindset? What do you think, what enters your head when you think about growing from 50 million to 100 million to 150 to 200 and beyond? What is the perspective that shapes the leadership approach for a $100 million entrepreneur?
Yeah, no, I mean, the best way I can answer that is, and it's in my book, but if somebody would have said that Parker and Sons just in Phoenix, Arizona would be a $250 million company, I would have laughed at them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's people on this podcast that probably think, like, yeah, Paul Kelly can do it, but I couldn't do it. I'm telling you, like, when I bought the company, it was 7 million in 2004. You fast forward 20 years later, 250 million. We used to grow 4, 5, 6 million a year. Then I was lucky enough to hire a guy named Daryl Bingham, and he was my right hand guy, and he ran the operations. I ran the revenue driving side of the equation more, and now he's the president running the whole thing. But it gave us the ability, with that 1-2 punch that he and I were, all of a sudden we grew 15 million, 20 million, 30 million. In 2022, we grew 40 million in 1 year.
Wow.
And you say to yourself, like, how did that happen? And sometimes he and I look at each other and we have no freaking idea almost. It's like, you have to hire so many people to do that. And it certainly takes a village to do that. So it's the simplicity. Well, one, simplicity is what I'm all about. I am not a complicated guy. I cannot implement complicated things. I believe the only way that somebody scales to 250, or if you're at 5 million, you go to 10 million, or 10 to 20, or whatever your numbers are. Simplicity will be part of that equation. The more simple you can make your pay programs, the more simple you can make your, how you go about pleasing the customer, the more simple your programs are. Simplicity makes everything more scalable. If it's more scalable, it's more easily repeated, it's easier to implement. Simplicity is part of everything I think about. And so that's part of it. And then making more out of the business you already have. We had 7 million in revenue. We already had business. And so I could spend a lot of money and make the phone ring, or I could take the business we already had and make more out of it. And that's what we got good at. We got good at answering the phone. We got good at closing that. We end every call with some other opportunities. So every call that comes in is a booked call. And not everyone, but 93% of the calls that come in, we book that are bookable. And then we end that with some other opportunities. So if they called in for HVAC, they're going to get a plumbing pitch. If they called in for plumbing, vice versa. And so then all of a sudden we had 2 calls for every call that came in. And then when we sent the technician out, that, $150, $200 call became a $400, $500 call, became a lead for a system, became a sale. We got good at all these things. And then all of a sudden, every call that came in wasn't worth $400 to us. It was worth $1,000.
Yeah.
And then we had enough to advertise. And then every call that came in from advertising was worth $1,000, not $400. And you get this snowball effect. And I would never say that anybody can do what I did, because anybody can. But everybody on this call, if they decided that they wanted to do it, if they found the right mentors, if they listened to this podcast and others, if they took what they learned and actually implemented it, which most people aren't good at implementation, they could do the same thing I did. I'm not some genius that knows more about something than anybody else, but I am a crazy implementer, and I love simplicity, and I love figuring things out that other people can't do. And I know a lot of your listeners are that way too. So you can definitely double your business, triple, quadruple in a very short period of time if you really want to do it, and you want to do it more than anything.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Paul, when you said you're a crazy implementer. From years of going to best practice meetings and even wrench meetings, and I think there's a disease in our industry called FTI, and it's just failure to implement. I think that there's very few new ideas, and I've heard you say this, Paul. There's very few new ideas in our industry. Like, there's no secrets. We all know what to do, but there's a lot of companies that struggle to implement, or they're afraid to implement, or, oh, my techs will quit if we implement that, or whatever it might be. And so I think from me observing you, and it's something I think I was good at myself, is don't be afraid to implement an idea. If it doesn't work, you can always change it. And I think, one of the things we did at Abacus was an idea that came from Parker and Sons about, trying to get the customer happily involved in another trade. There's nothing magical behind that idea. It's just simply asking the customer, if they call in for a plumbing call, do you have any air conditioning issues that we could take a look at, save you time? We'll get the two technicians out at the same time, whatever it might be. So I think, Paul, you hit the nail on the head. So many people in our business know what to do, they just don't do it for whatever reason. So what do you think, Paul, at Parker and Sons, which systems and processes were the most critical to ensure the growth that didn't compromise quality?
As we got larger and larger, we had to have more systems and more, whereas when you're smaller, you can kind of wing things. But yeah, no, we came up with the Parker experience. Everybody might have this. Certainly, Nexstar has their own list of things that you should do on a call, but we really outlined those, thought through them, and figured out what could we implement and how do we really drive this home. And so the Parker experience and that starts on the phone, and certainly carries on when the tech pulls up and where he parks and how he walks up to the door and knocking instead of ringing the doorbell and putting on the shoe covers and what you say when they say, no, you don't have to put on your shoe covers. And you say, no, it's a company policy. And if I didn't do that, I would feel like I was cheating my company, and I won't cheat my company. And that kind of attitude and those kinds of things and all we did throughout that process is what really, you have to have that as a core so that you can deliver that consistent service like McDonald's does, call after call, hamburger after hamburger.
Yeah.
And so really it starts there. That's part of the process. And then we got really good at sharing, which sounds weird, but when we have a good month, we love to share. When we have a bad month, we love to share it. It's funny how when everyone knows how you're doing as a company, and they know how they're doing as an individual within that company, you'd be surprised how many will rise to the occasion and help you fix something that might be broke. It's when you don't want to tell them, or you don't want to deliver bad news, or you don't want to focus on something that needs improved. And we had a mantra that everything could be improved. There's nothing that I ever did that I couldn't have done just a smidge better. And so it's that constant, improvement that we worked on as well. And we got really good at the sales process, which is a whole process. And we had to, because in the early days, we were $1,000 higher than everyone else. Then we were 2,000, then we were 3,000, and here more lately, we may average more like closer to 4,000. When you're $4,000 higher than most of your competitors, you better be good at certain things and have certain warranties and install it a certain way and build that value that is worth 4,000, which isn't, people need to feel that as much as you tell them that.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you guys
we
obviously
got
have
good
a
at all of
really great sales as well as a service system, but you're also really good at marketing. It's one of the things that you guys are exceptional at, getting to 100 million and then going to 200 million. And in the past, you've talked about there being 3 keys that are pretty essential to your marketing strategy. And maybe it's not always 3, maybe it's, 3 keys that come up, maybe it's 4 or 5, but you've got a couple keys that are important. Would you mind talking about those?
Yeah, so there's a 3-legged stool that I used to have in a presentation of how to market. And I think if you do these 3 things really, really well, you're going to grow your business and do well. They're consistency, longevity, and diversity. The same message over a long period of time, over a number of mediums, works. It's almost flawless. You got to do it a long time, though. And what the typical contractor does is they try something. They go on TV maybe, and they're on it for 3 months, and they decide, well, that didn't work. Well, they didn't stay on it long enough. Or maybe their message changed, or any number of things. The problem with consistency, longevity, and diversity is that all three of those together, to get that, it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the average contractor can't afford to get that, at least in a big way. And so in the early days, we didn't try and do it in a big way. We tried to grab an audience. Sometimes it was development by development, zip code by zip code, neighborhood by neighborhood, and trying to dominate that way. And so it's better to be a big fish in a small pond than it is to be a small fish in a big pond full of a whole bunch of competitors. So we carved out who we wanted to talk to. It wasn't everybody. It was maybe 100,000, homes out of, back then 1 million. And that's who we were going to talk to. And we just beat them up with our message over a long period of time, over a number of mediums. And whatever you do, dominate, even if in a small way. Dominate your audience so that over time they know, because the average consumer doesn't use us very often, unless they get a tune-up or they have a maintenance agreement. But most people don't. So the average buying cycle, it's not pizza, it's not your haircut, it's something you don't want to buy. I mean, no one woke up today wanting to buy what we sell. It's a have-to purchase. And because it's that, and because they don't use you very frequently, you have to be consistent. You have to be out there. You have to dominate an audience so that they learn who you are and why you're different and why you're better. And we got really good at that. And I had the lucky advantage of my son did our marketing in the early days. And then he went and started Clover Marketing, which is a company that helps HVAC, plumbing, electrical businesses grow. And that provided the opportunity for Justine, his sister, to take over the marketing for Parker and Sons. And her and I have been a combo that I think may be unbeatable in the industry. She's certainly one of, if not the best marketing mind that I've worked with over the years, and we feed off each other. And I think that whether it's somebody that you have internally that is good at marketing, or hiring a company that is good at marketing, if you really want to grow at a really fast pace, you may need some help. And so that's something that we always excelled in, and came up with some great themes and some neat ways to really attack the market in an inexpensive way at the beginning. And then once we were large enough, then we could throw our weight around, which is what we're able to do now, at least to some extent.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, Paul, that both Justine and Josh were able to work with you and learn from you, and eventually make you look good. So I mean,
Yeah, and that's hard to do.
yeah, no, they're I know them, lucky enough to know them both, and they're first class marketers, just like yourself. So, Paul, despite that, our industry is enormous, right? But still, very few companies ever reach $100 million. What do you think that is, and what do you think differentiates? We know a handful of companies, right, at least, that have hit that $100 million target. But what do you think differentiates the ones that do from the ones that can't?
I'll go back to, there's a chapter in my book that focuses on a term that I learned when I worked at Roto-Rooter. It was called opticizing. There's an optimum size for every location. And it depends on the market, it depends on competition and economy and a whole bunch of stuff. But mostly what it depends on is you. And so I would say that, and I'll go back to what you said earlier, Alan, is implementation. I mean, you can learn a lot of things, and we all do when we go to seminars or conferences or we listen to these podcasts, and we can learn a lot. Learning is great, but implementing is where the rubber meets the road. It's where the successful and the wildly successful, split apart, or the not successful. And when you can get outside yourself and look back in at you, and are you a good implementer? Are you a good leader? Are you a good work on you? And if you work on you, that will permeate throughout your organization. And especially if you can work on being a fantastic implementer. Execution of an idea is really what it's all about. And we share a lot, and that, like you said before, Alan, there's nothing really too new in our industry, and there's not some silver bullet that if everyone knew it tomorrow, their business would just grow tremendously. It's just a bunch of hard work. It's a bunch of blocking and tackling and grinding every day and doing the normal things that most people can't do anymore. But it is all about implementation. If you can get crazy good, if you ask somebody at Parker and Sons what my favorite line is, and it's getting crazy good at things, not just good at them, not just pretty good at them, not just okay at them, certainly getting crazy good at them, better than anybody. And when you can do that, and you can't do that with everything, you got to focus. And then you have something. And then you can start to celebrate the fact that you're winning. And winning doesn't have to mean that you're growing your top line revenue. It doesn't have to mean that. It doesn't have to mean that you make more money on the bottom line than anybody else. It means that you set out to do something and you and your team got it done. That's winning. So, and that can mean that you get more revenue, and that can mean that your bottom line is great. But when you can set out to do something and you get it done, you start to create a culture of when we say something, when we want to do something, we get it done. And I think that's what people are missing, that are maybe stuck at 5 million or stuck at 2 million or stuck at 10, whatever.
Paul, I got a question for you. You're talking about hard work. I 110% agree with you. As coaches and consultants and sometimes counselors, we tell that story because we know it's true. And yet right now in the social media world, it's good that it's coming from you because people believe you, but there's an overabundance right now of people saying it's super easy. It's not hard. There's secrets this, secrets that, and it grosses me out, frankly. I want people to hear what you're saying. My question to you is, what do you say to the person that has a small business and they hear the guy go, "Oh, this is going to just be totally super easy. It's not hard work. It's no, you're just not doing it right." Will you help combat that, please?
I think the key is that if you analyze most everything that we do in our industry or the successful people, what they're doing is simple. Simple. Not easy, but simple. And most of the concepts that I preach, that I believe in, they're fairly simple concepts. They're fairly simple things to think about. Implementing them is never easy. It's never easy. And to make it part of your culture and to have something that stays implemented is very, very difficult. And it takes a lot of work. And there's no one in our industry that I've ever met that has been successful at a high level, that hasn't put in the work, that would ever say it's easy. that would, it's just a bunch of hard work. Now, I do think most of the concepts, most of the things we talk about, I was at a seminar once and it was about how people think, because that's like that. I get into, like, if I can make somebody think differently, I have a chance, right? It's when I can't that you'll never win an argument, or you'll never convince them to do something, or they just fight you, right? And and there was a student in the class in the third day. He stood up and he told the professor, he goes, everything you're telling us is just common sense. It's simple stuff. It's common sense. And the professor said, yeah. He said, would you want it to be anything other than that? And, and anyway, just because it's simple, just because it's common sense, just because you've heard it 100 times before, somebody might think, well, it's simple then. No, or it's easy. It might be simple. It might be a concept that you've heard and it sounds simple, but it's never easy.
You know the old saying, Paul, common sense is just not that common,
Right.
You said
Yeah.
something there, Paul, that kind of struck a chord with me. You said, not only do you have to implement it, and I'm ad-libbing a bit here, but you said something like, not only do you have to implement it, you have to make sure it stays implemented. And I think that's a huge challenge in our industry. I think about the very first day I started Abacus, I start cutting the water heater boxes in the warehouse and putting a sticker on the water heater. And we did that for years. And we moved buildings 3 times. And one day in the third building, Mike Myers came to me and said, just want to let you know, I haven't ordered those water heater stickers in about a year. And I went, what? Like, we go through a roll every 3 months. How could,
Yeah.
And I went out and nobody knew who stopped putting the stickers on the heater or when it stopped, but it just stopped.
Yeah.
And it just really struck me that you really have to, inspect what you expect, right? Like, you implement, like, that process was implemented on day one in the life of Abacus, but somebody decided along the way, and the further it gets away from the top, I think the more likely it is to stop the procedure. But I do agree. I think it's an important thing for our listeners to hear. You don't just have to implement it. You have to make sure it stays implemented. I think that's a great point, Paul.
That's a great story. And you mentioned stickers. Like, I got with marketing, Justine, my daughter, and Daryl, the president. And, we grew crazy growth for the longest time. And now all of a sudden in 2024, it was a little bit harder. They still grew, but it was harder. And the growth wasn't quite as much as what Parker and Sons was used to. And then you start peeling back the onion of, hey, what aren't we good at that we used to be good at? And we weren't doing stickers either. And I was like, how'd that stop? We used to sticker everything up in the house, and so that the house became your customer as much as your customer became your customer when they moved. And as Google has become more expensive, as competition has increased, because, most of the medium to larger size companies are now owned by a PE firm and they're part of a group, they have to create their own story and they want to flip at some point and reap the benefits. And so they're trying to figure out how to become better at advertising, how to become more sophisticated, how to grow. All of a sudden, everything becomes harder. Everything becomes more expensive.
I
And
agree.
you have to go back to the basics of, hey, are we stickering things up? Are we asking for referrals? Are we doing this? How do we create a lot of low cost leads to help offset the high cost leads that now we have to spend money on? And so you end up reinventing, in some sense, this huge company and we all have to do this, no matter what your size is, that all of a sudden the things that maybe we didn't have to be so good at, now all of a sudden we have to be crazy good at them again. And it's an important lesson that we should have never not been good at them, but sometimes you can take your eye off the ball when you're up, when you're up by so many runs, and then all of a sudden you look and it's a close game again, and you said, "Oh my gosh, I wish we wouldn't have had that error or that, and I wish I would have, tried a little bit harder, and I wish I would have been doing all the things that got us this lead." And now you're back to the basics.
I think back to the basics is such a great term, Paul. Like, I always use the example at Abacus when I was talking to the team. Whenever we run into an obstacle, if we just go back to the basics, we can clear the obstacle. And any of my guys will tell you, I'm tired of Alan giving that speech because he gives it seems like 4 times a year. But I do think whenever there's a problem and you look at the root cause of the problem, somewhere along the line, we got back away from what made us good, you know? Paul, you've been the main guy at Parker and Sons from 2005 until, I guess, 2024 when you slow down a little bit. You've had some amazingly fantastic years, and I'm sure you've had some challenges. What would you say was one of the toughest challenges Parker and Sons face, and how did you adapt to overcome it, Paul, during that time?
I mean, I would say, the typical answer would probably be mine still. COVID was this challenge that we had to reset how we did things, when we did things, in what manner we did them in. And it was a huge challenge. It was a challenge to keep the employees happy, to keep the customers happy, to keep them safe, and to do things the way that we needed to do them. And I think now in that process, I think we learned a lot about ourselves. I think we learned a lot about how we could do business differently, how we could get people to work from home, how we could and continue to do so, and how we could protect ourselves against supply chain issues and all kinds of things. And I think it really helped us. I think overall, the biggest challenge that we've all had is there's scarcity of some things. And sometimes it's equipment, and sometimes it's, a product or this or that or the other. But there's a shortage in our business, and most people would say a shortage of technicians, and there is. And when you grow as fast as I know Abacus has, and most of the wrench companies, and certainly Parker and Sons, you've got to hire and be really good at that. And I think the shortages in our business, especially people shortages, and the biggest shortage people-wise is not technicians. That is a shortage, and you need to figure it out. But the biggest shortage is a shortage of leaders, of great managers and supervisors, of people who can drive your business. If you have that, and I think that's where a lot of energy has been spent trying to grow your own techs and hire your own techs, whatever, but way more emphasis has to be on getting our leaders to be better leaders, bringing up leaders in our businesses so that we can hand them off at some point. I was lucky enough to land a Daryl Bingham, but not everybody's that lucky. And so we have to shore up those shortages of people, and leaders is where I think our biggest challenge, even at Parker and Sons, is today. There's not that many high performing leaders in our industry at a high level, and how do we get more of them? So
let's talk about that then, because recruiting and training and hiring and growing people is a super common theme, especially amongst the high achievers. And I'm listening to you, how you talk about going through COVID, and I find myself going, you've been very honest about those two challenges. And is your default mindset to go, where's the opportunity or where's the obstacle? Because I'm sure a little bit of both is there, but what's your default mindset? And then whichever one it is, how do you eventually get into turning it into an opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, I don't view obstacles. I don't, they're all opportunities for me. But I can tell you, I ran into a lot of obstacles, and they weren't all opportunities. And so, but I will tell you this, that I tell people this at work all the time: run to the problem,
Hmm.
don't run away from it. And that's what I think I've been good at to some extent, and I think a lot of people at Parker have been good at, is running to the problem, and not away from it. And I teach it in sales. When somebody asks, like, how much does a system cost? They're trying to either get rid of you if you're trying to set up a lead, or they're trying to make you realize that it's painful for you to tell them how much systems are, and most people won't tell them. And because we give free estimates and it depends on so many factors. So, but I like running to the problem. I like bringing up how much a system is, but I don't want to frame it in the 15-20,000 dollar range. I want to frame it in the net investment range of, this is your monthly payment minus your monthly utility savings to come up with a net investment. And for only, $120 a month, or $4 a day, or sometimes it's $3 a day. I tip that much for lunch. You can have a brand new state-of-the-art heating and air system that'll make you more comfortable. Anyway, you go through all the things it'll do for you. You get all that for $3 a day. I like running to how much is a system,
Hmm.
not running away from it. And we treat problems like that at Parker, and I know a lot of the wrench group companies do too. I know Alan does. And the last thing you want to do is ignore problems or run away from them, not address them, let them fester, let them grow, and then all of a sudden the problem is much larger than you thought it was. And so, yeah, we have problems at Parker all the time. We're always doing something we shouldn't, not doing something we should. We have the same problems that everybody listening on this podcast has. We just have maybe 100, 200 times more of them than you, but we have the same problems.
Mm.
And it's addressing them, getting rid of them, solving them, going on to the next problem. That's something that I tell Daryl all the time, is the speed at which you can solve problems is also important, especially the larger you get.
Mm.
You can't take long to solve them. You've got to plow through them quickly.
Completely agree with you, Paul. I often say, over the years, I've often said to the managers, when we have a complaint, the longer you take to get back to the customer, the worse the complaint gets, because they
Yep.
think they're being ignored, they feel cheated, whatever it might be. It just gets worse and worse and worse the longer you leave it. And, I always say, look, if they call and you don't get the call back immediately, because and I always use the tactic of saying, by the time we get off this call, once I get on the phone with the customer and say, Mrs. Jones, by the time we get off this call, I'm going to have you happy. We're going to figure something out. And that totally
Yep.
disarms them. But when they
Yeah.
just go, they're wondering, are you ever going to call back? It just gets much worse, So totally agree with you.
Yeah. When I was smaller, I used to handle a lot of complaints, and I finally realized, like, I'm not uniquely qualified to handle complaints.
Mm.
One, I don't like handling. Two, I have a simple philosophy on how to solve them. I'm going to ask the customer what they want, and that's exactly what they're going to get.
Right.
And anybody during the process, before it got to me, could do the same thing. I gave them that, they could all do that. So ask them what they want. Most of the time, they don't want near as much as what you give them. And then give them a little extra is always good.
Yeah.
Something they didn't ask for. But in the end, at least give them what they want. And then you're done with that problem. And then go on to the next one.
I was just about to say it before you said it, Paul. When you ask them what they want, they'll typically ask for less than you're willing to give. And it's just interesting because you're putting all the power back in their hands and allowing them to tell you what they want. I think it's great.
And sometimes they're not reasonable.
Right.
And we all know that. And you can always divorce a customer, but make them happy first. Give them what they want.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't make much sense for us to fight over things that you're going to end up giving them anyway when they, and your reputation, not just in court or you having to hire a lawyer, but your reputation online is as valuable as anything that you own almost. So protect it, take care of it, nurture it, grow it.
Well, I used to call those customers the 3%ers, Paul. I had this theory that 3% of people are unreasonable. It's a totally made up statistic, but it always worked in my brain. So I used to tell our guys, look, it's just a 3%er. Move on. What's
Go
ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
No, when you can totally make happy or elate the toughest customers, you'll be really good at wowing all the rest of them.
That's right. I agree. Paul, what specific steps have you taken at Parker to create a culture of excellence and accountability? Like, what specific steps do you think you've taken?
Well, one of the things is we reward everyone, not just with their hourly rate or their salary or whatever, but everyone from the highest level down to the last warehouse person or the lady who cleans our bathrooms and our offices. Everyone's on a bonus program, and everyone contributes in one way or another. There is no job better than another, and everyone contributes, so everyone should have a way of sharing in the success that the company is having. And so that was a core fundamental that I wanted. And I think that leads into other things that you're sharing, the good things and the bad things with everyone. And we all get to share together in the successes, right?
Right.
And then making, I always tell people I'll get a bigger kick out of them making money than the company making money. It doesn't mean the company don't want to make more money. It just means when they're able to do stuff for themselves or their family that they weren't able to do working for somebody else, I get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to make more money, don't work for us because I won't get a kick out of you.
Yeah.
And I used to tell everyone that, and it does create. Now, money isn't everything. I'm not here to say that money's, but if you do what our employees do in the conditions that they do it in, you deserve to make great money. And so that's part of our formula, along with great benefits, making it fun at work, making it an enjoyable place, and creating that culture of winning. Part of what I think we have at Parker is we win at a higher level. We take budgets and we just blow them away. And we created a culture of winning, and people love to be with a winner.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of things you can do to create that. And once that's going, then I think the rest takes care of itself.
I totally agree with you, Paul. Paul, one of the things I've been thinking about recently is how much harder it is for somebody starting a business in 2025 than it was in 2003 or 2005. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur just starting out on their journey in 2025?
Just actually starting their business, starting from scratch,
Starting from
you're
scratch, yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say this, that one, you're in a great business. Everybody needs what you do, and so enjoy that part of it because you're a hero when you show up. And start small. Find a mentor. A lot, you can go to conferences, you can go to seminars, you can listen to podcasts. There's nothing better than finding the right mentor for you. And sometimes that can be a peer, that can be somebody that even works for you.
Hmm.
That it can certainly be a competitor. Yeah, even competitors in your own market can you can help each other. Some of my best friends are competitors of ours. And so find a mentor, though, that you can learn from, that can guide you along the way, and start small. Don't worry about, I'm not a big goal person like BHAGs. Don't think, how do I become 100 million when you're just starting off or you're only a million? Just concentrate on getting a little better at something every day and executing against the ideas that you hear and focusing on something, and and you'll get some momentum going. And when you get that, one day you'll look back like I look back, like I know you look back, both of you look back, and you say, wow, like, look at the success I had. And that success won't be all yours. It'll be a whole bunch of people got you there. And it'll be, but it all starts with just, keeping your head down. Don't worry about the competition. Focus on what you can accomplish, what you can pull off, what you can implement, and get crazy good at it.
Paul, I just want to say I am so appreciative. You come here and you represent a very large company. A lot of people would see it as out of reach, and you've been super approachable. Your advice has been super practical. Really, it's advice that anyone at any size can follow. And going back to your three-legged stool of marketing, even that you were very honest. Like, you'll be able to do this better as you get bigger and you have more bullets to put in the gun. It's going to take some money. Everything you've said here has been awesome.
Hmm.
I want to thank you for that. And clearly, we're going to ask you to come back for another round soon because there's more to learn from you. But I'd like to leave Alan with the last question today, especially since you guys are such good friends.
So, Paul,
Yeah.
what trends do you see shaping the future of the home services industry? It's so different today than it was even 3 years ago. What trends do you see shaping the future of our industry?
Well, I think you're already seeing some of them. One, advertising and marketing is going to get more expensive. Google is only the cost is going up. The cost of Google's probably doubled in the last two
Yeah,
years, maybe one and a half times over the last three. It's getting crazy, and so that trend is going to continue. Competition is going to get tougher, more sophisticated. That's going to continue. And that's a good thing. That, a rising tide raises all boats,
right.
right? So it's not a bad thing that everyone's getting better at what they do. You will start to see more equipment and more things sold online. Will our business become a commodity at some point? Well, it still has to be installed, right? And it still has to be serviced. And things don't fix themselves yet. But you will see things sold online, and I think you have to be prepared for that. I think at some point you run to it. Don't run away from it. Don't ignore it. It's not a bad thing. It can be a good thing if you do it right. I think you'll see AI in our business to a large extent. You're going to see that accelerate. That probably, as far as short-term things going to be going on in our business, that's going to be, one of the things that will affect our business the most. And I think that's going to be a really good thing. I think we'll be able to know how well we're doing. We'll be able to, potentially answer phone calls With AI, certainly critique the phone calls that we're on with AI, and that's going to get more sophisticated and better. I think all of those things are, you know, sometimes people would call them obstacles or, hills to climb going into the future, whatever. I think they're actually going to be opportunities for many of the people listening to this podcast. And no matter what, we're in a great industry. It's an industry that's not going away, and we're in a great place to be. And that's what's attractive to all of the PE firms and their groups. Is this industry is just a great industry to be in, and it's not going to be affected materially by recessions, whatever. Will it be affected somewhat by a recession? Yes, but we come through a recession real well. Some of our best growth years were in a recession, so you can still grow. So I think that's what I see, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking to be a part of it.
Just finally, Paul, in the last year or so, you've transitioned out of the day-to-day, more or less. What legacy do you hope to leave behind through your work with Parker and Sons, Paul?
Yeah, well, I wrote, everyone can't live forever. I keep trying to figure it out, and I told my wife I would figure it out eventually. And when I wrote the book, it gave me a way to kind of live forever in people's minds or thoughts or practices. So, one of my legacies is that book.
Absolutely.
I have another idea I'm working on of I got the URL raisinggoats.com because I feel like growing the greatest of all time, and you're considered one of the greatest of all time.
Thank you, Paul.
Some people consider me, that, and there's others in our industry as well, many of them within Wrench. And I would love to figure out a shortcut way, and I've got some ideas on how to grow leaders faster, better, get them better at implementing and all those things. And so that might be a legacy that I work on at some point and soon and try some things. But really, my legacy is all the people I helped. My legacy is my grandkids and my wife, Tricia, and there could be no better legacy than your family and the 2 kids and their spouses. And we've got one more on the way, so we'll have 4 grandkids.
Oh, fantastic, Paul.
Yeah,
congratulations.
spending time with them. I thought like I would have to have a business to run to feel satisfied, but I can spend 5 minutes or all day with any of the grandkids or our kids and feel perfectly satisfied. So my legacy will be them and how they think and how they approach stuff and their success. So yeah,
That's great, Paul. Yeah, I concur with the grandchildren. I'm enjoying my own grandchildren, and so it's it brings things to a whole other level, I think. So great
Yeah.
answer, Paul.
We should have had the grandkids first, is what they say.
That's right. That's right.
But, not much fun.
We'd have never bothered with kids if we just had grandkids first, Paul. So anyway, well, thank you so much, Paul. This has been great. Really, really great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, appreciate you too. Thank you. Look forward to maybe doing another one with y'all, and
We'd love to.
good luck. I'm looking forward to listening to this podcast. You couldn't have asked for 2 better people to drive the idea of 100 million mindset. That's going to be an interesting one for everyone to listen to. So look forward to it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the show this week. Head over to toddliles.com/mindset to get the show notes. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss a new episode of the show. And if you enjoyed this episode, then share it. It really helps us get the word out. You've been watching the $100 Million Mindset with Alan O'Neill and timely Todd Liles.